bits of transfer news for West Ham today. Nikola Vlasic is set to join Torino on a permanent transfer in the January transfer window. They've got that clause for the summer. It looks like they're just going to bring it forward and activate it already. They're obviously very happy with what they've seen. So while it's perhaps unexpected and maybe not very exciting for West Ham fans, there could be a domino effect for us. We'll discuss that in just a minute, because first we're going to start with the hopefully a little bit more exciting news, but interesting news nonetheless, that Rob Newman has been over to Brazil, specifically Rio de Janeiro, to start setting up a scouting network for the Hammers. Now there's proof of this, and there's a couple of stories that come off the back of it as well. But this is what I want to see. This is a long-term strategy. This is the point of having someone like Rob Newman in the Rob Newman role that we've got at West Ham. For years and years at West Ham, it's always felt like, let's just get through the next transfer window. Let's just get through the next transfer. It's always been short term. Let's buy a player for this season. Forget about what we're going to do in 3 seasons' time. Get him in now and let's see what you can do now, and hopefully it works out, kind of thing. And to be fair, it is difficult to set up a long-term transfer strategy at a Premier League club these days. How many Premier League clubs do you think are confident that their manager today will be their manager in summer 2024? So not next summer, the following summer. How many clubs are confident that the manager will still be here? You can count them on one hand. How many fan bases are confident their manager will still be that manager? Again, very, very few. So it is difficult, and this is where you almost need your recruitment team to be separate from your management team. Of course, they have to work together for the next transfer window. So the January transfer window, you do need Newman and Moyes singing off the same hymn sheet. But for that summer 2024 window, for example, actually at the minute, Moyes doesn't necessarily have to worry about that. But Rob Newman perhaps does. And this is what I find really encouraging, that actually we maybe do have a bit of a long-term plan. Perhaps that if Moyes was to depart, Newman would remain and that his work would continue. And that's important. I think this is why the role of a sporting director, now whether you think Mark Noble should be that man or not, park that for just 1 minute and think about the role of the sporting director. This is why I think it's quite important, because it takes some of that pressures away from Rob Newman and allows him to have one eye on longer term projects like this one that he's setting up in Rio de Janeiro. I find it really encouraging, really promising, and potentially really exciting as well. Will it yield results? I don't know, but what I do know is it gives you a much better chance of finding the upcoming talent in Brazil than it does if you don't have it. I think that's a very, very fair thing, and it's a very minimalistic thing to say. That at its worst is what will happen. Now, the stories come off the back of it because actually they've been discussing this story. Rob Newman, the fact that West Ham, a big Premier League club, are setting up a foundation, they're setting up roots in Rio de Janeiro for a scouting network to hoover up Brazilian talent, hopefully, is big news over there. So there's a South American football channel discussing it because of what a journalist has said, and that journalist has spoken to a football agent to get confirmation. It's similar to what we do in Hammers Chat, but the South American version, really. So I've been watching the videos with the old subtitles on because my Portuguese ain't up to scratch. Been reading a few articles to find out as much as I can to relay it back to you. And there's photographic proof, actually. Let's get that photograph up there. There's Rob Newman. Rob Newman over in Rio de Janeiro a week or two ago, doing the old shirt exchange like they do on a big European night with a pennant, handing over that, roll it up and throw it at the dugout and say, here you are, put that somewhere, will you? Rob Newman headed out there, done the exchange of shirts, posed for photos. I mean, he looks a lot happier to be seen with their one than their representative does with a West Ham shirt. I mean, that's last season's shirt. It's not even, I've only just noticed that's not even this season's shirt. Look at their shoulders, the pattern, that's last season's shoulders, and the trim this season's blue, not white. We didn't even take over this season's shirt. No wonder the guy's scrunched it up. He's looking at it going, this is last season's one, you cheeky bugger. If this is how you plan on doing negotiations with players, forget about it. I mean, you can take Rob Newman out of West Ham. You can't take West Ham out of Rob Newman and all that. Why would we not take this season's one? What's the club save doing that? A tenner? What? I didn't even notice that until just now. Anyway, let me get rid of that. There you go. Rob Newman headed out to Rio de Janeiro with last season's home shirt to set up a scouting network. Looks like they're off on the wrong foot, unsurprisingly. But the reason for Rio de Janeiro, there's 4 big clubs there. And I guess the theory is, if we have scouts there or whatever, there's always going to be games going on in the city, but also all the other Brazilian clubs will come to the city. The equivalent would be, forget that it's Premier League for a second, setting up a network in London. You've got all that London club, so you can attend West Ham, Chelsea, Brentford, Arsenal, Tottenham. You can attend all those games, but while you're attending those games, you will then see Liverpool, Everton, the Manchesters. They'd all come to London to play their games. So actually one city, but you cover the entire Premier League in terms of watching it live. So I think it makes sense. So the four big clubs, excuse my pronunciation, in Rio de Janeiro. We've got Vascos, who are particularly important to this story. We've also got Flamengo, Fluminense, and Botafogo. We've got them as well. I told you I couldn't pronounce them. So that's the four Brazilian clubs in Rio de Janeiro that are of interest to West Ham. Now Vasco in particular, because they've got an 18-year-old winger, Eguinaldo, I think. 18 years old. He's just signed a new contract with them, however, and they're playing in Serie B. They're in the second division. He's got a few goals this season, playing winger. He's got a £26 million release clause, which obviously sounds expensive, but Newcastle are strongly linked to him as well. Now the agent of this player has confirmed that Newcastle want him. He has refused to confirm that West Ham want him, but while he confirmed the Newcastle reports in a separate story, he also confirmed there's other Premier League clubs interested in his player. But what he also did was confirm that Rob Newman has been in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, the photo's there anyway, but he confirmed it was not for a specific player, but to start setting up a scouting network in Rio de Janeiro. So that's where this story's come from. Be more to come from this one, I think, and one thing's almost guaranteed is the links to West Ham and players based in Brazil is a way to go through the roof, I think. But like I said, I find this really, really encouraging. I don't see this as bad news whatsoever. If we are starting to get a little bit more clever with our transfer dealings, if we're trying to find the upcoming talent in Brazil, that can only be a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And if you can discover a player a season ahead of the other clubs like Newcastle, that if you can discover a player a season ahead of him becoming really, really good and costing an extra 5 million, it just makes sense. Some things just make sense. I think starting to branch out and set up these scouting networks in various different countries, I think is clever. And like I said, this is really, really encouraging, because for years it's all been short term at West Ham, and this is now and again you get an example of a long term strategy, not very often, and this is one of them. So I am going to cling to it. Yes, I am going to cling to it. Now, moving from the long term to the short term is Nikola Vlasic. I mean, what a disaster this has been for West Ham. We signed him 25 million or whatever. I can't be bothered arguing about how much it's cost and have we refused to pay CSKA because of the ongoing thing with Russia. Disregard that for a second. We forked out 25 million-ish for him. It was a flop. It was a major flop. We've loaned him out to Torino with a ridiculously low clause in there of 12.6 million, and they're set to trigger it in January. They're not even waiting until the summer transfer window. He's become a key player for them. He got 3 goals, got an assist at the weekend against AC Milan. He hadn't scored or set up a goal for a handful of games, to be fair, 5-6 games. I've sort of half kept an eye on him because he's a West Ham player out on loan as it is, but it looks like that's come to an end in January. So while it's unexpected, it's probably David Moyes' biggest transfer error at West Ham for me. The Jordan Hugo one, and it's turned into a bit of a meme and a joke and a bit of banter, hasn't it? But I get it. The reason we signed him was in case we got relegated. Let's be honest, that's why we've done it. But in his second tenure, this is the one signing under David Moyes we've made. It's just been a complete write-off. And I don't mind, to some extent, David Moyes being unable to work with Felipe Anderson or Sebastian Haller, who, 2 players, and Vlasic has 3 players now that have been struggled under David Moyes, gone elsewhere, and they're performing really well. Anderson's playing fantastic for Lazio, Haller was playing fantastic for Ajax. But with Haller and Anderson, I can't really lay that at David Moyes' door. Could he have done better with them? Of course he could, but at the same time, it's not his players. He never signed them. They weren't signed under him. And I often struggle to really blame managers for not wanting to use the previous manager's players to some extent, especially when the club is as rich as West Ham and we can afford to sell them and bring in replacements. But Vlasic is the one that actually, it was signed under David Moyes. Was he used correctly last season? No. For Torino, he's playing really well, and he's playing in the centre. He's playing in that number 10 role, and he's playing really well in there. So did he get a fair crack in that position last season? I don't think so. But there could be reasons Moyes didn't want to play him. Perhaps in training he wasn't very good. We don't know. Did David Moyes even want Nikola Vlasic? Again, it's difficult. It's always difficult to prove these things. Every fan has a theory as to who decided to buy which player and stuff like that. And now and again, we will find out exactly who it was. Nathan Aguerd, for example, we know David Moyes wanted him before Rob Newman came here. So perhaps Rob Newman handled the negotiations, but certainly I think Aguerd was identified by West Ham before we signed Aguerd this summer. Last summer, like I said, when we signed Aguerd this summer, someone had to remind me, said, you discussed him last summer. He was alternative to Kurt Zoom. I thought, did we? And then I went back and checked the videos and turns out we did. So there's evidence there. Aguerd was identified prior to Rob Newman. But in regards to Vlasic, who signed, doesn't matter really. It didn't work out. It's cost the club a few million at least. So he looks set to join Torino for just under 30 million on a permanent. Now, this will hopefully allow West Ham to have a bit of money to spend in January transfer window. There's not been too many rumours in regards to whether we will be dipping our toe into the market. In fact, there's been some suggestion that don't really have much to spend. We might keep our eye out for one or two players at the most, and that's about it. We've got quite a full squad anyway. If we did want to bring anyone in, we'd probably have to look at offloading one or two prior, but there's certainly space for one more. This would give us 12.5 million in the kitty, if you like, which is a decent bit of money. You can find good players for that. Maybe it's going to get ploughed into Rob Newman's project out there, and we're going to see a few players arriving maybe in the summer or beyond or something. I don't know. But what it does mean is that Vlasic is off, 12.5 million is coming into West Ham. So hopefully, if Moyes does want to get a little bit adventurous in the January transfer window, hopefully he can do. It'll be Mark Noble's first transfer window as sporting director as well. So I'd imagine he'll be quite keen to get involved to some extent. And so yeah, there you go. Two bits of transfer news. One a little bit more exciting and interesting than the other, I think. But one's a disaster, one could become a disaster, but hopefully, I am hoping that the Brazil thing actually does continue. At the minute, like I said, it's just a story coming from the South American side of things, and it may not be accurate. It might be that he's gone out there to speak about this one winger from Brazil, and that's it. It just seems quite... The fact that Rob Newman is personally gone, I think, is quite pivotal to that story having authentication. I know the photo's there, but all that does is prove he was there. It didn't prove why he was there. But I think if it was just as a bit of interest in a player and that's it, would Rob Newman go himself? Would he delegate it? Is it something that could have been handled via phone call and email and stuff like that? I'd imagine it was. So the fact that he's gone out there sort of makes me believe that actually perhaps we are setting up a form of scouting network out there. But it won't be done quick. It's just because he's gone out there doesn't mean it's in place today. I'd imagine this is a long process, and it's going to be a long time before it yields any results. But I'm okay with that. I think sometimes football requires a little bit more patience, and it's difficult. Hell, I find it difficult sometimes to give patience to things regarding football. But in regards to setting up a scouting network, I think that's one thing we can definitely just say, right, yeah, you crack on with that, and we'll revisit it in 12 months' time, and hopefully it's starting to yield something. Even if we haven't signed a player, if we're starting to identify them and really narrow down which players we think might be of interest to West Ham in the future. But there you go. Brazil, Vlasic, and I'm going to disappear. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow ahead of the West Ham game taking on FCSB tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to it, actually. Catch you then. What are you still doing here? Yes, you're right, I've stole this from Gonzo. This is Gonzo's thing, but I quite liked it. The first time he did it, I didn't even notice the music bit came on and I disappeared. And then one of my friends the next day said to me, oh, the bit about Gonzo at the end. I thought, what are you talking about? Anyway, the second time he did it, I caught him. I stuck around, and you end up just slacking off one of their transfer rumour places. I mean, he wasn't wrong. It is really crap. But anyway, the reason I'm stuck around is to tell you a little about Patreon. However, I'm trying to bribe you. I've got a free Patreon video for you to watch at the end of this little clip. Now, you've probably heard us mention Patreon before, but it's really important to us that people do join up. Without people joining up, we wouldn't be able to do this as our job more now than ever. We don't have any sponsors this month. We've got none. So in theory, we've lost a large chunk of our income, which is kind of expected with the World Cup, but it just makes it a little bit uncomfortable. But I don't want to get the begging bowl out, if you like, during the actual videos. I don't like it, but kind of have to. So if you fancy some more Hammers Chat videos, you can go to patreon.com/Hammers Chat. Links in the description and the pinned comments of this video. It's not just videos though. You can get entry into our giveaways. We give away some tickets. We've also got a big giveaway every month. It's usually a signed shirt or two up for grabs. We've got an Upton Park seat coming up with the presentation box. That's coming up in December. But it's also online store discount, and it's permanent. If you're a patron, you can use that store discount as many times as you want for as long as you're a patron. You can use it once, twice, 10 times, does not matter. Depending what tier you join is depending what you save. And some people, I see the orders come through from the store, but they joined Patreon prior. They'd actually saved the discount they saved, would pay for their Patreon, have a little bit left over, and they get all the video content in return as well. Anyway, I'm going to shut up, but basically earlier on today I came across a couple of statistics, and I like stats, but it's not enough to make a video about it. It's not the most interesting topic, but it was enough to pique my interest, so I've discussed it, whacked it on Patreon. If you want to watch it, it'll be on your screen in approximately 3 seconds. Now I'm going to disappear. I'll catch you tomorrow.